You are not tired because you are lazy. You are tired because you just made more micro decisions in 18 minutes of scrolling than your ancestors made in an entire month of survival. And the metabolic cost of that is not a metaphor, it is a measurable theft of glucose from your brain's executive control center before you've even gotten out of bed. Ask yourself this: when did the act of choosing what to watch become more exhausting than the act of working, exercising, or actually living? Right now, your orbitofrontal cortex is calculating probabilities, weighing reward predictions, and discarding options faster than consciousness can track, while a silent debt accumulates deep in your striatum. The machine has turned leisure into a high-stakes optimization problem with no solution, and you are the test subject who was never told the experiment started. I want you to pause and feel that strange weight behind your forehead. That is not sleep deprivation. That is the biological signature of a brain drowning in abundance, and you are about to understand exactly how the algorithm engineered this paralysis before you even knew it had a name. In 2000, psychologist Sheena Iyengar and her team set up a display of gourmet jams inside a California supermarket, alternating between a table with 6 flavors and a table with 24. The results seemed trivial at first glance. The vast selection drew more initial interest, but it concealed a perversion that would later terrify anyone who understood what the digital age was about to become. When it came time to actually purchase, 30% of customers exposed to the small selection bought a jar, while only 3% of those who faced the 24 options managed to reach for their wallets. The abundance did not liberate them, it sedated them, mid-aisle, shopping basket dangling loosely from their fingers, as their brain quietly sabotaged the very act of choosing. Now drag that experiment into the present and replace the jam table with the infinite scroll of opening a streaming platform at 10:47 p.m. The paralysis you felt in those first few moments of this video is not a character flaw, it is the exact same neurological shutdown reproduced inside a far more hostile architecture, amplified by an algorithm that personalizes not the decision, but the exhaustion itself. The supermarket study was static, 24 jams remain 24 jams. But your feed adapts, regenerates, and weaponizes your hesitation, ensuring that the number of achievable choices never stabilizes long enough for your dorsal anterior cingulate to anchor a decision. What was once a curiosity of consumer psychology has become, in your pocket, a continuous cognitive assault that begins the moment your eyes open and does not relent until they close. The neurochemical signature of this paralysis reveals itself most starkly when we dissect what your brain actually burns during choice. Every selection, every discarded thumbnail, every rapid mental simulation of whether a title will satisfy you draws from the same finite reservoir of adenosine triphosphate in your lateral prefrontal cortex, the seat of deliberate, effortful processing. When demand exceeds supply, the brain does not simply lose willpower in some abstract sense. It begins shunning decision-making to older, more impulsive structures, the amygdala and the ventral striatum. The result is a visceral anxiety that most people misdiagnose as restlessness, a silent panic that the machine has trained you to solve not by stepping away, but by scrolling faster, hoping speed can outrun depletion. This is where the feedback loop tightens into a clinical snare. Functional MRI studies reveal that as cognitive fatigue deepens, the insula, the region responsible for mapping your internal bodily states, begins firing aberrantly, misinterpreting the metabolic debt of overchoice as an existential threat. Your heart rate may not spike, but the background hum of unease you feel is anatomically indistinguishable from the early stages of a fight-or-flight response, triggered not by a predator but by a grid of cover art. The algorithm has, without any malice or medical license, conditioned a Pavlovian anxiety loop. Exhaustion arrives, your body signals danger, and the only escape route presented is another dopamine-weighted option that deepens the very fatigue it promises to relieve. You are not choosing entertainment. You are self-medicating a cognitive injury with the weapon that caused it, and you can feel it damaging something vital even if no diagnosis sheet has a code for what you are experiencing. But the psychological layer is where the damage becomes existential and almost impossible to articulate in a clinical intake form. When you finally select something after 27 minutes of scrolling, the brain does not reward you with relief, it punishes you with a phantom cost known as opportunity cost salience. Every alternative you rejected remains neurochemically alive as a lingering simulation, a ghost branch in your caudate nucleus that silently calculates what you might be missing, draining residual attentional resources long after the choice is supposedly resolved. The result is a uniquely modern form of anguish. You are watching, but you are not present, because part of your cognition is still back at the grid, still weighing, still mourning the paths you did not take. The algorithm has not just stolen your time. It has fractured your capacity to experience satisfaction in the one thing you ultimately chose, and this fracturing accumulates as a low-grade, ambient grief that clinical psychology has barely begun to name. This brings us directly into the heart of the digital paradox, the precise mechanism by which the promise of perfect personalization becomes the engine of chronic indecision. The algorithm collects terabytes of behavioral data on you, refines a prediction model of your desires so accurate it borders on obscene, and then presents you with a catalog so finely tuned to your psychological profile that every single option feels eerily almost right but never definitive. This is the uncanny valley of recommendation engines. By eliminating obviously wrong choices, it leaves you marooned inside a hall of mirrors where every reflection looks like a version of yourself you might enjoy. And the absence of clear rejection criteria forces your prefrontal cortex into an exhaustive pairwise comparison it was never evolved to complete. Freedom, in this architecture, is not the ability to choose what you want, it is the obligation to reject infinite versions of yourself in real time. And that obligation is the exact source of the fatigue you felt before this video even began. Now close the loop, the frozen thumb, the hollow tension behind your eyes, the silent metabolic hemorrhage that this video began with, all of it converges into a single, chilling clinical portrait that transcends metaphor. What you are experiencing, nightly, in those suspended moments before a single pixel moves, is not laziness or indecisiveness in any classical sense. It is a predictable, reproducible state of neurocognitive depletion induced by an environment that optimizes for engagement while ignoring the biological limits of the organ it hijacks. You have become the subject of the largest uncontrolled experiment in choice psychology ever conducted, and the attrition is now visible in population-level markers, rising baseline anxiety, fragmented attention spans, and a pervasive, low-grade anhedonia that researchers are beginning to link not to what people consume, but to the sheer cognitive cost of the selection process that precedes consumption. The paradox is now fully visible and inescapable. The algorithm promised to know you so you would never have to choose, yet its omniscience has made every choice more punishing because the stakes have become fabric of identity rather than mere preference. To opt out is to face the void of disconnection. To remain is to accept a slow, daily tax on the very executive functions required to build a meaningful life. The machine does not need to understand you clinically to damage you systemically. It only needs to keep you suspended in that glitch state between infinite possibility and zero commitment for just long enough that the glucose in your frontal lobe depletes and the search for a perfect video becomes indistinguishable from the search for a feeling you have not genuinely felt in years. The quiet that comes not from finding the right thing, but from needing nothing at all. You are not broken, you are being drained. And now you know exactly why. The Psych Paradox Lab is a documentary exploration space about the mysteries of the mind and the impact of the digital world. The content presented here is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not a doctor or mental health professional. If you are going through difficulties, seek qualified professional help.